Hey everyone, it's so great to see a full room here in the Frangipani. Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly meeting for June 28th, 2022. I'm Sally Gaskell, your president, and our vision as a club, a vision statement that we adopted several years ago, is to be a diverse, engaged community of leaders whose fellowship and service have a significant impact both locally and globally. We're part of 1.4 million Rotarians throughout the world, proud to be a global organization. It's been my true honor to be your president for the last year. It's not something, frankly, I ever saw myself doing until I did. And so, if you're a member of this club and you've not yet served as president, I would like for you to consider it. Not for this coming year and not even for the year after, but for the year after that, because it's my job to recruit our next president-elect. When your year has finished, you'll get to join our fabulous group of past presidents, most of whom convened last week in person at Sarah Laughlin's home, in person, in honor of our incoming president, Alan Barker, and we shared a wealth of information about leadership. With that, you may be seated, and I would like to ask Leslie Green, one of those past presidents, to come to the podium for our reflection.
Hello, everyone. I thought I would turn our reflection toward 4th of July and Independence Day. And as such, I thought it might be appropriate to reflect on democracy. The U.S. has stood as a beacon for freedom and democracy to the world. And it's troubling that democracy is threatened around the world as authoritarian regimes have become more effective at co-opting and circumventing the norms and institutions meant to support basic liberties and providing aid to those who wish to do the same. Indeed, there are some concerns in our own United States. For Freedom House, a group that annually measures the strength of democracies, they note that since 2005, the number of countries with declines in their democracy have outnumbered the numbers of countries that have experienced an increase in their democracy, a very troubling thought for our world. I thought it would be good to remind ourselves what democracy is. On their website, they explain that democracy means more than just majority rule. In its ideal form, it is a governing system based on the will and consent of the governed institutions that are accountable to all citizens, adherence to the rule of law, and respect for human rights. It is a network of mutually reinforcing structures in which those exercising power are subject to checks both within and outside the state. For example, from independent courts, an independent press, and a civil society. It requires an openness to alterations in power with rival candidates or parties competing fairly to govern for the good of the public as a whole, not just themselves or those who have voted for them. It creates a level playing field so that all people, no matter the circumstances of their birth or background, can enjoy the universal human rights to which they are entitled and participate in politics and governance. Democracy is also more than just an ideal. It is a practical engine of self-correction and improvement that empowers people to constantly, peacefully struggle toward that ideal. When one part of the system falters, the others can be used as tools to repair and strengthen it. This unique and inherent capacity for self-correction is what makes democracy so successful at delivering long-term stability and prosperity. No democracy in the real world is perfect, and those demanding democracy are not demanding perfection. What they desire are the freedoms and the institutions that allow them to create a better life and more just society over time. So I believe it is fundamentally in line with the Rotary principles that we act individually and collectively to uphold democratic principles in our community, our nation, and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Always good food for thought. And I want to thank everyone who took the time to do a reflection once or more than once over the last year. You're absolutely valued. Now it's time to introduce our guests, and Steve Engel is going to do that for us. For those of the group who are here in the Frangipani, Joy, do we have any guests on Zoom?
Sally, we do not have any guests on Zoom. We are a small but mighty group of Zoom Rotarians today.
Lovely to see you all on Zoom. We can see your photos in small rectangles at the top of our screen. Steve.
Thank you so much. We have 3 guests today, and Ashley's guest, and I would ask you to stand when we name you so that we can properly recognize you. First guest, Ashley's guest is Junior Blondell. You're from here in Bloomington. Thank you, Junior. Welcome. And Jim Bright's guest is Clara Stanley from Brown County Rotary. Hi, Clara. And we have a very special guest, Yolanda's very special guest. And so she had asked to introduce him herself. So go ahead, Yolanda.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, 3 weeks ago, I had the pleasure at a networking event to meet a fellow Rotarian. He is a second-generation Rotarian. His father was a Rotarian, and now he is, from the Rotary Club in South Africa. This is my friend, Mdu, and I've asked him to introduce himself with his own name because it's a little bit tricky if you don't see it written. So here you go.
Hi, my name's Duduzi. So that's why she's saying it's complicated because there are so many D's in it. And then my surname is Dube. So it's Duduzi Dube. So I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up in Zimbabwe. Run an organization called Autism Western Cape. The reason I'm here is through the Mandela Washington Fellow. So the experience here has been amazing, and thank you so much for inviting me because I'm trying to experience as much as I can, and everyone is so kind and welcoming. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, I wanted just to follow up with Michael Shermis. There were 40,000 applicants who applied to this program, which is funded by our Department of State. 700 were selected, and 25 are at IU this summer for 6 weeks. We have the other 675 at other universities like University of Texas at Austin, UC California, Berkeley, different places. But we're very privileged to have you and your other colleagues. These are all young professionals. They're leaders in their communities, attorneys, business owners. And so if you see them, we have 3 more weeks with them, and hopefully they'll be able to join. It was really hard. He was running from one meeting to another. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much to each of you for coming today. I appreciate it, especially to Duduzi. You're a long way from home. So thanks so much. And any of you would like to know more about Rotary, just ask anyone here. Thank you.
Okay. I am here at the podium, even if those of you on Zoom can't see me. So we're very pleased to welcome someone who's deep in the job, Chung Him Chu, who has just completed his master's degree in saxophone at the Jacobs School of Music. After a couple of weeks of training, he's going to be serving as our producer for Zoom and our hybrid meetings, assisted by Michael Shermis is giving a standing ovation, assisted by Ellen Barker, Michael Shermis, Dave Meyer, and others. We're so happy to have you here, Chung, and really, you have no idea how happy we are to have you. Also want to thank, of course, our wonderful Zoom host, Joy Harder, Ruth Boschkoff for greeting our members today in the Frangipani, Steve Engel for introducing our guests, Leslie Green for that reflection on democracy, and our roundabout reporter for this week is Glenda Murray. We have one Rotary birthday coming up this week, and I find this a wonderful coincidence. Joyce Poling, a longtime elected official in Monroe County, was born on the 4th of July. And two member anniversaries, Craig Spence. Craig, I know you're here, along with your name badge. Craig Spence, 20 years as a Bloomington Rotarian. Congratulations. And John Bender, a longtime honorary member and past president, 52 years in Rotary. Yeah, 52. Okay. With that, I'd like to invite Winston Schindel to come to the podium for a special tribute. And Winston, we're very glad to have you back from, I think it was Switzerland. Is that right? Yeah, very happy.
Well, it's my pleasure to share a few words with you and for Dean Watson. We were trying to determine how many years Dean has been an honorary member and member of this club. We came up with 37, so he doesn't quite match John Bender, but he's in that group. Dean passed away on April the 16th, 2022 in Buckeye, Arizona, at the age of 94. Because of his love for Indiana University, he was a graduate of IU football, and IU basketball. Bloomington really was the perfect place for him to live. He only left in 2019 for Arizona so he could be closer to his family. In his professional life, Dean was extremely successful in the life insurance business, where he served as a CLU life underwriter for New York Life. Over the years, he served in many community organizations, but there was no doubt about his favorite one, and that's Bloomington Rotary Club. I always knew where Dean was seated because the laughter which was generated from that table would fill an entire room. He was a great storyteller, and in the true tradition of Chancellor Wells, he never let facts get in the way of a good story. He was also a practical jokester. Dean was one of these people, had a very dry sense of humor, and in some ways you had to sort of develop a taste for Dean, if you know what I mean. He was passionate about his work and his friends. His personal and professional life reflected the best of the Rotary test. So please stand and join with me in a moment of silence to honor Dean Watson. Thank you very much. You must be seated.
Thank you, Winston, much appreciated. And now I'd like to introduce a new transferring member to our club. So we don't do a formal induction as we do with a brand new member for Rotary, but I am very pleased to introduce to you all Jeff Tinez, who is now going to be shown on Zoom. Thank you, Ilan. Yeah. I asked him to come up so that y'all could see him. So Jeff comes to us from the Rotary Club of Great Falls, Virginia, which he founded. He launched 2 Interact clubs and spoke at the Bangkok Rotary Convention on the topic of launching new clubs. I think that was 2012.
Correct.
He grew up in Indianapolis, graduated from Notre Dame, and received a Rotary Graduate Fellowship from the Rotary Club of Indianapolis to study in Freiburg, Germany. He's been a member of Rotary clubs in Phoenix, Berlin, the first Rotary club to meet in former East Germany, Aspen, Colorado, and Washington, D.C. You see why I wanted to introduce him. He's a graduate of the IU Maurer School of Law and lived and worked in Germany for 12 years. He and his wife, Fionnuala.
Close. Fanula.
Oh, Fanula, she's Irish. Have 4 grown children. They live in Bloomington, and in 2020 launched a new company called
Summa Forte.
Summa Forte, which is a new health and wellness company, and we're so happy to have him here in Bloomington Rotary. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Sally.
Oh, and we have a flag.
So this is from the club that This is from the club in Great Falls, Virginia that I founded together with 85 inaugural charter members, eventually becoming 100 members in 2011. I'm delighted to be able to give it to the club that's now my home.
Thank you. Rotary is deep and it is wide. Today we have South Africa, we have Great Falls, Virginia, by way of Freiburg and Berlin and elsewhere. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Ashley Wesley, could you please come up and introduce our speaker, who's already actually been introduced, but you're going to get the full treatment now.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Junior Blondell. He's currently the owner of the Blondell Consulting Group, where he is a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker, trainer, and DISC personality consultant. He is the general manager at B97 and Hoosier Country radio stations in Bloomington, and he's a worship minister at a church in Paoli, Indiana. Drawing from over 30 years of hands-on experience and leadership in the corporate world in restaurants, retail, publishing, and media, Junior has led high-performing sales teams to record-setting accomplishments and has led highly effective management teams to higher success. Junior has spent many years in ministry, where he's led youth volunteers, worship teams, and various lay ministries, always inspiring the best out of each person. Junior is excellent at motivating teams and organizations to higher performance levels, and we're going to hear how we can do that today. Junior.
Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction. Thank you all for letting me be here today. I'm privileged to get to speak to you. I want to ask you, how many of you have ever tried to get a toddler to eat their vegetables? Okay. If you were successful, then you're an influencer. If you weren't, then maybe you have some work to do. My wife, her name's Natalie. When she was 4 years old, Natalie had a friend who was 11 years old, so 7 years difference. And you can imagine how that relationship goes, right? The 4-year-old is definitely going to look up to the 11-year-old. Everything they do is going to be great. So one day, Kim, the 11-year-old friend of my wife, comes over for dinner. Natalie has always eaten her vegetables, everything on her plate, everything green. She loved it. Natalie's eating green beans. Kim looks at her and says, "Ooh, what's that? Why are you eating green beans?" My wife has never eaten another green bean in her life. Kim influenced my wife, Natalie, even at that young age. It looks like I'm having trouble with control here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if you had a teenager, and this room doesn't look as dirty as my teenage kids' rooms look, but if you've ever had a teenager and you tried to get them to clean their room and you had success, you're an influencer. Today, I want to talk to you about how to be an influencer. And what I'm going to share with you today are just a few of the steps. It's not everything you need to know. But also what I'm going to share with you today is not complicated. It's actually simple, but it's not easy to do. You may look at me when I'm finished and say, "Well, yeah, you didn't tell me anything I don't know." And I would say that's probably true, but I would ask you, how well are you doing it? So the first thing I want you to do, if you're taking notes, if you're online and you're taking notes, I want you to draw a big compass on your page, and we're gonna fill it in a little bit, okay? This is called, I refer to this as the influence compass. And I want you to start by putting an N at the top and an S at the bottom, a W on the left, because west is on the left, and E on the right. And then right in the middle, we're going to put a dot. We're going to start with the dot because the dot is you. If you had the opportunity, would you follow or be influenced by you? The hardest person to lead is yourself. And it's because sometimes we have limiting beliefs of ourselves. I'm not an influencer. I'm not somebody who can have an impact on somebody else. So we have these limiting views of who we are and what we can do. And some of that has to do with self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? If I make a mistake, I just tell myself how stupid I am, all right? Maybe you do the same. Why did you do that? I was so dumb. But that self-talk can limit our abilities. And it can start to affect what we're able to do. Another way that we limit ourselves is because we compare ourselves to other people. Why would somebody be influenced by me? Shouldn't they be influenced by somebody else who's just better? I don't match up to them very well. But the truth is, how we see ourselves should be that I have influence over the people around me. And we're going to see how that works. So the next thing I want you to do is draw a line from the center, from you, straight down. That would be to the S. And this is called positional influence. It looks like this. You could be a shift manager or a supervisor or a sales manager, an executive, even a mom, dad, aunt, and uncle. It's a position that you have earned or been given. But just because you have the position doesn't mean you have influence. I remember when I first started at the radio station. I've been there for 13 years. Within 6 months, I was promoted. I was promoted to sales manager. I had a lot of experience in management. I'd done management several times in different places. But the people that I started to manage didn't know that, and they barely knew me. They knew I'd had some success, but I had a position. I didn't have influence. The influence had to be earned over time. I had to build trust. I had to prove myself. So a lot of people, when they get this type of positional influence, they use intimidation or manipulation to get what they want, to get the results that they're trying to get, to try to get people to do the things they want to do. They use other tactics. But to get real influence, to be able to have an impact, there's some things that we're going to learn today, how to go about that. And intimidation and manipulation is not the best way to do it. Let's move on to the next level, which is peer influence. The people around you. So that might look like coworkers, peer groups, siblings, friends, social media. Some people want to be influencers in social media. That's kind of a big buzzword these days, right? To be an influencer. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So, what does that look like? Well, it looks something like this. A few weeks ago, the movie Top Gun came out. How many people have seen Top Gun? Yeah, I watched it in 1985. I watched Top Gun. It's been my favorite movie ever since. It's the best movie, in my opinion, best movie ever made. So the first weekend it was out, I'm there and I'm watching the new Top Gun movie. The next day, on Monday, I go to work. Guess what I did? I told 3 other people that I work with how great the movie was. So they, in turn, they went out and they watched the movie, right? I influenced their life. Have you ever watched a Netflix series? Have you ever watched a television show and you told somebody else and they went and started watching it and they loved it? You had an influence on their life. But that's what it looks like. So there's a couple of questions that you want to ask yourself when you're talking about influencing peers. And the very first thing you want to know is, what's your motivation? Why do you want to influence the people around you? What's your motivation? Some people want to be an influencer because it makes them feel good. It's an ego thing. It makes me feel important. I'm somebody if I can be considered an influencer. And that's okay, but I'm not sure it's the best motivation to be an influencer. The next question I think you want to ask is, or maybe it's, you know something that they need to know. You know something that they don't know, so you want to influence the decisions they're going to make. You just want to share some information that they need. Or maybe it's an experience that you've had that they're going through and you can help them, so you can have a positive influence on their life. So maybe you've had a sickness, an illness that you've had to go through treatment for. Maybe you've experienced a death of a family member or a friend, and you know someone who's going through that. That's how that peer influence can work. Now I want you to draw a line from the middle to the top. And this would be influencing up. This would be bosses, authority figures, mentors, coaches, parents. And a lot of times we don't think about being able to influence up. Well, how could I possibly influence my boss? How could I possibly influence my parents? But I spend most of my time trying to influence the people above me. And the way you do that is you have to identify, what do they want? What do they need? What can I do to make their life better? You see, your boss, and we all have a boss. Whoever's above us, we all have someone. And what do they need? Our job is to make them look good. It may be your spouse. It may be stockholders. It may be a physical boss. But our job is to help make them look better. So what can I do to make them look better? What do they need? What would success look like to them? An example is my dad. My dad's now in his early 80s. And my dad, even though he's in his early 80s, I cannot tell him what to do. Doesn't work. He's made that very clear. He's making his own decisions. So the best thing that I can do is try to influence those decisions. So I think about, okay, what does my dad want? What's he want? What's he need? What could make his life better? And then I can use my ability to persuade him and to throw out some options that might look good to him. And then I can influence his decisions. So how can I have an influence? What are the practical things that I can do to have an influence? First of all, you have to decide whether you want to be a positive influence or a negative influence. Now, I don't know very many people who have said, oh, I want to be a negative influence. We don't set out to be a negative influence. But do you nag? Do you look for the problems? Are you always thinking about what could go wrong? then maybe you're a negative influence and you just don't realize it. Or are you a positive influence? Do you look at situations and do you try to be an encourager? Do you try to look at the positive way things could turn out? Do you look at the possibilities? Then you have a potential to be a positive influence. And again, going back, this isn't hard, but so many times we don't think about whether I'm being positive or negative. Next, the golden rule. We all know it. Treat others the way you want to be treated. But how many times do we actually do that? How many times do we actually think about, what does that other person need from me? How could I help them? How would they like to be treated in this situation? If a restaurant clerk doesn't do exactly what we want, do we berate them? Or do we encourage them when they're having a tough day? It's simple, but it's not easy. Next is trust. Probably the most important part of influence. Because the only way that you can influence someone is to build trust. And that takes time. So you have to do it over and over and over. You have to build a relationship, whether that's with your family or whether it's with the people that work for you or with you or above you. Whoever it is, you have to build trust, which means you have to be trustworthy. People are looking for commitment, sincerity, reliability. They're looking for consistency and competence. They want to know that you're capable of doing what they need you to do. And as parents, sometimes we just skim over that. You want to influence your kids? Let your kids know that you can be trusted. You want to influence your parents? Let them know you can be trusted. And finally, integrity. This is the difference between manipulation and influence. Because we can do all of these things that we're talking about. We can have an influence, and it can be a negative influence, and we can use it to gain something if we don't have integrity. And there's nothing that stops us. A lot of people do it. But integrity, doing what's right, having values, honesty, principles and morals, doing the right thing, caring about somebody else, that's the difference. And that's what can help you be an influencer. A couple months ago, I had been off from work for most of the week. And our sales week runs from Friday afternoon through Friday morning. So we can get reports in and everything. We have until about 10:30 in the morning. And I had been gone most of the week, so I get back on Friday morning. And I won't give you specific numbers, but I will tell you that our sales for the week were at 3% of our goal. 3%. Now, I don't remember a time when we've been that low going into a Friday morning at 10:30. So I pulled everybody into my office and we sat down and I had some decisions to make. I looked at them and I said, okay, what do you got? What can we do? And I looked at one of our sales guys and he said, I might be able to get something in, but I have to go right now over to across town. I said, go. Just get up and go. Remember, you're really good when you're face to face. Get in front of them, explain why this is a good thing for them, see if you can close a deal. Another person said, I've been trying to get a hold of 3 people this week. I haven't been able to get a hold of them. I said, okay, go get on the phone, and here's what I want you to do. And we made a plan. And I said, just remember, it's to their benefit. Just help them get what they need. The other two people threw out a couple of things that they've been working on kind of out in the future, and I said, okay, let's see if we can go ahead and get those things done. Let's get them wrapped up. Remember, you guys are good at what you do. Let's make it happen. I could have been negative. I could have gone in. I could have screamed and yelled. I could have told them that what have you been doing for the last 4 days? I could have treated them with disrespect, but I chose to treat them the way I wanted to be treated. We put a plan together. I've spent hours and hours and hours with each one of them talking about what they want out of life. So I pulled from that knowledge. And at 10:30, we had 75% of our goal. Within 2.5 hours, we got 75% of our goal. Now, we didn't make it 100, but that's a significant amount of money that we were able to close in deals in just 2.5 hours. And how did it happen? Because I had the ability to influence what they do. They trusted me. I treated them with respect. I believed in them. They believed in me. And at the end of the day, we accomplished a lot more than we could have otherwise. Why do you need to be an influencer? Because the people around you need what you have. And you have the ability to have a positive influence on the people around you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
So I want to throw something just maybe a little sideways on this is you can have positive influence, but someone that you know may be experiencing very negative influence. Maybe they've got some different information or someone has tried to influence them in a very negative way and they're going a bad direction. So how do you overcome that influence when that person is so convinced that they're going the right way?
Sometimes it's hard, right? But having integrity and building the trust, to me, sometimes that helps. Because we may have different outlooks, we may look at things differently, but if I've built the trust and they know I have integrity, they're at least going to listen to what I have to say. And we may not always be able to influence that other person, okay? I might not always get the result that I'm looking for, and also it could take time. Influence sometimes can take a long time. If you have had a child who has chosen a direction that you don't feel good about, all you can do is have an influence on them every time you have the opportunity, and then hoping that eventually they'll see life a little different. And it does go back to experiences and your perspective, where you are in life, and what you've had to go through. I hope that answers your question. Anyone else? Anybody on Zoom have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Junior. I was just going to ask you, you're talking about individuals here, I take it, but, your business is advertising. And what does it take to be successful in the advertising business, from a advertiser's point of view, to help your clients achieve the results that they want to?
Okay, good question. It goes down to, in my mind, it comes down to, why do you do what you do? So are you asking, let me make sure, are you asking from a business standpoint a business that I'm working with, okay? And how can they grow their business through advertising, okay? When you run a commercial, you have a microphone in front of you, and you get to speak to a large group of people. For us, it's like putting you in the middle of Memorial Stadium, 75,000 people, and you get to tell them what you do. What I would recommend is, why do you do what you do? Do you know it? Do you remember? Why? What's your motivation? Why do you do it? And what sets you apart from everybody else? People respond to stories. People respond to your passion. People respond to why you do the things that you do. Not everybody will, but you'll find the people who line up with your values and they line up with your commitments and your whys, and they'll do business with you. And when they do, they'll do business with you for a long time. That's the short answer. I could probably give you a much longer one if we had some time to talk. Anybody else? Again, thank you for oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I've got it. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Junior, thank you so much. In honor of your presentation, we're going to be making a contribution to a nonprofit in Bloomington called the Tandem Birthing Center. So before I talk about next week's program, I want to mention that this is Gil Souza's last day here in Bloomington. I'm so sad, Gil. Gil, it's been wonderful to get to know you. Again, Rotary is an international organization. Gil's hometown is São Paulo, Brazil, but he's leaving the Kelley School of Business to take a distinguished professorship, I believe, chaired at any rate, chaired and endowed at the University of Tennessee. So congratulations, but don't be a stranger. Come back and see us. So next week is week number 1 of the new Rotary year, woot. And our annual changeover meeting will be up in the Georgian room and on Zoom. And with that, John, would you share the 4-way test +1 graphic? And we'll close our meeting with the 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth,
will it be beneficial?
beneficial to all concerned?
And
Fifth, is it fun?